general rule, like even if you're sitting with like a piece of paper, try to follow like some kind of like a rule, like, okay, I want to go clockwise direction or I want to go anti-clockwise direction, because let's say you're doing a takeoff on a floor plan and you get interrupted midway and now you have to come back and you're like, okay, what have I already picked up and what have not picked up? So if you have like a rule that you typically follow, it will be helpful. Also try to identify things with different colors, like don't make every wall blue or don't make every door that you're counting. Like try to identify them by different colors, and if you're working with multiple floors, that try to, if there is a specialty item that you have picked up, try to put it like, okay, I saw this on the roof or I saw this in the basement, because after like 50 pages of takeoffs, you're not going to remember where did you pick that up. So if there are some things that are specialty and you want to go back to, name them that way, that, okay, this is first floor tiles or second floor rooftop unit, not rooftop unit, but second floor HVAC unit or whatever that might be. So some general simple rules for that. These are some things which I'm hoping that you guys are familiar with, that if you're doing earthwork, you're doing it by cubic feet, cubic yard. Concrete, it's typically done in cubic feet, cubic yards. Steel is in tons. Formwork, finish is in square feet. Again, sheetrock, paint, everything, it's all in square feet. Now, calculating the estimate. Now you're going to start, now that you have done your comprehensive, like your full takeoffs, you have all the quantities from the floor plan, you have looked at every single note that was shown in the drawings, because a lot of times, especially, I don't know how many of you work with SCA, there are so many details in the notes.
I used to work it.
Right.
Implied here,
Yeah.
or out there.
So they're notorious, or at least in my experience, the drawings that I've seen are not that great. So you have to look into the little notes and details, because you're going to miss out on so many things if you're not reading through the notes. And again, you don't want to be in that situation. So now that you have done your takeoffs, now start and looked at all the notes, start putting things on paper, start listing them out. Okay, this is my scope of work, like a bill of material, if you may. And try to do it by divisions. Are you guys familiar with the various CSI codes?
Show of hands.
Anybody know CSI codes? Okay, CSI.
Next puzzles and works with next codes. Yes. Next, okay.
Right. So it's basically, and this is how your specs will be. They are by code. So like, for example, like division 2 is existing conditions. Division 3 is concrete. Division 4 is masonry. So at least be familiar with what trades you are. Like if you are carpentry, so you should know what your trade is, so that you can, and at least even if you don't have the night to go over the whole spec, at least look at the spec for your particular trade. So do look at the division. So like division 21 is sprinklers, division 22 is plumbing, division 23 is HVAC. That's just industry standard. I'm not making this up. This is just standard codes. So what?
Oh,
Bless you. I try to, when I'm setting up my estimate, I try to go in that pattern. So like I'll put all my division 1, which is general conditions and general requirements, under division 1. Again, it just organization. These are just organization patterns, but just helpful. And again, because at the end, when I'm done with my estimate, let's say my whole estimate came out to $100, just again, making number up, I can go back and be like, okay, my division 1 was $20 a square feet and my division 22 was $30 a square feet. So I'm just trying to find any pattern that I can so that I can use this over and over again. Okay, so now here's a simple example of the way a typical estimate that I set up. This is from plumbing, but I hope all of you guys can see the screen here, because this is a bit small, but if you can't, let me know.
And you will get a copy of the presentation next put it there. So
Okay, so this is a simple sheet that I've set up in Excel. And I'm going to ask you to, there are multiple softwares out there for estimating, there's Sage and, there's so many other things that people invest in. But if you're starting out, I do not want you to spend your money on any softwares because I personally feel Excel is such a powerful tool. We just don't make enough use of it. And we don't realize how, like, people do programming on Excel. There's so much that you can do in there. So, and this is like the simplest of the template that you can create for yourself. So what I've done is I've created a template, and it's such that I can pick this up for every project and try to use and reuse again and again. So let's say if you're a plumber, you know there are like at least 10 to 20 line items which are going to be common for every project that you do. So yes, you're going to spend some time developing the first one, but once you have done that, this is just something that you get, clear the quantities and put in the next numbers for the next project. And yes, you can refine it as for next project, you might have some other line items that you suddenly think that, oh, I did not have that in the previous one. So, but you can add that always, right? So, so here what we have is in the first column is the material. It's basically the unit cost of the material. So like 1 linear feet, what does it cost? Like what's the cost of a 1/4-inch cold water pipe, which is basically copper? What is the per linear cost of the insulation? What is the per square feet cost of sheetrock? Whatever that might be for you, you can set that up that way. So that gives me the unit cost of the material. The next column gives me the total cost, which is basically unit times the quantity. Now, moving on, the next section is the labor section. So here what I have is, in my first column, that's productivity. Productivity is how long does it take for the labor to do a unit of something. Like 1 square feet of tiling, or 1 square feet of ceiling, or 1 linear feet of piping. I just want to know how long it takes for one. And why I'm doing that? Because I want to use this template multiple times. So that today I have 200 linear feet. If tomorrow I just delete this and make this 400, I don't have to do the math again and again. I just put 400 and I'm done. Like, it's going to calculate for me, and all the formulas are in there. So that's the first column, which is the productivity. I'm multiplying that with the labor rate. I'm sure everybody's familiar with the labor rates. So that's my labor rate column. My next section is the difficulty factor. What that is, so not every project is straightforward, right? Like, if I tell you you have to work on 100 square feet of space, and then I tell you you have to work on 500 square feet of space, now your pricing might change. But pricing as in like your productivity, you will change it, because there's always a minimum cost. So your labor is not going to come to the job site for 1 hour. There is always a minimum cost of doing something. So you have to account for like at least half a day, right? So that's when I play with productivity. If my number, let's say my labor is coming out to 1 hour, and I'm just estimating something for like a very, 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 very small job. I know that, yes, theoretically that works, but then there are minimum costs. So I have to multiply my productivity with like a difficulty factor. So that's where I use difficulty factor. Or if I'm working in confined spaces, as I was saying before, there are always difficult site conditions. Are you working in a crawl space? Are you working in the tall ceilings? Are you working in an occupied building where you have to be extra careful of where you're stepping? Because, you have protections and all those kind of things. Or am I working on, another thing which I should have initially mentioned when you're looking at the specs is, or, when you're going over the drawings is, are you working on the weekends? Are you working after hours? Because again, that's labor cost, right? So, the way I am accounting for all of those factors is by playing with this difficulty factor. And mind you that this difficulty factor and actually the labor rate, both of those columns, I have linked it to one cell at the top. There's a simple Excel formula to link everything to that one cell. So now if my next project changes, I'm not going about changing every single row, because my rows, I might have like 100 rows. I can't do that. So all I'm going to do is go and change it at that one cell, and my entire estimate, it changes. Any questions so far on this? Oh, yeah.
What do you just you learn? So where do you get your rates?
The labor rates?
Rates for specific mates.
You mean labor rates?
Labor.
That's basically, so if you're working,
So yeah, I was going to just that's a good question. So you forget the New York State Department of Labor has a prevailing, there's state labor rates and then there's city labor rates, right? And so that gives you a breakdown by there it is right there. Rates that you should pay for supplemental benefits. So insurance and vacation time. So that's a very important piece because when you have change orders, if you don't have the right calculations for labor rates, that could impact if you're bidding, especially if you're bidding, we're going to be talking about product labor agreements soon in the next session. But when you're bidding on public jobs, that could impact your estimate. If you're not putting the right rates for your mechanic and the right supplemental, then they're not going to be able to, it's not going to match with the bidding.
and this is why, I mean, it's important to be breaking down your estimate into, by trades and, by productivity, because then you know how long actually you're taking, and then you're multiplying it obviously with the right labor rate and the right multiplier. So it's like, to be prepared, it's not easy to just, create this detailed estimate. There's a lot that goes through it. So yeah, as he said, so this is just a screenshot from, if you go to New York State Department of Labor website, there's going to be like a drop down and you can choose the county you're working in, New York, Albany, Nassau, whatever that might be. And it'll open up a PDF, which will look something like that. And you can choose, search carpenter or what is this? This is like a laborer. So a sheet is going to open up. So you're going to have the wage and then you have the supplement benefits, which you add up. And now yes, you have added that up, but that's not your labor rate. You have to account for payroll taxes. You have to account for workers' comp. So now you have to multiply those things to your wages and supplement benefit to get to the final labor cost, which you're going to use in the estimate. So don't just add these two up and be like, okay, I'm done. No, you have to, because where is payroll tax coming from? Where is workers' comp coming from? Like, where is that? So that has to be multiplied with this.
What about, your profit and your overhead?
Yes.
That's also something you want to.
That's also, yeah. So like, here's just an example. Again, don't use these multipliers as is, but this is just an example. Like, payroll tax, you multiply a percentage, then you have workers' comp, you multiply a percentage, then you have added that up, that comes to your subtotal. And then I multiply an overhead profit to that. And that's my total hourly rate. Sometimes you can't put it yes, we do sometimes carry overhead and profit below the line, but it's always helpful to, put it within my labor and then that way I know kind of cover.
Good question is, what's the rationale for having the 21% home rate profit? So just explain to us what's the rationale behind that, because when we typically look at instruction, they say, 10%.
The time, let's say.
See, this seems like it's padded, but I want us to understand what's the magic of it. No.
This, I mean, no, and here.
That's a good estimate, right? That's a good estimate.
So this percentage also, yes, you said 10%, but I do want to put the caveat the overhead profit also depends on the size of the job, and it's typically inversely proportional. So the small, because think about it, if you have a small job, you still have a minimum overhead that you have to be doing that's going towards your job, which is not direct cost to your job. So the smaller the job, so as a proportion, you still need the same kind of overhead. Whereas if it's a big job, that overhead profit, the overhead, not the profit, but the overhead kind of as a percentage reduces, because now that's kind of spread across a big, much larger chunk. So if you have a small job, this percentage is higher. Typically for a larger job, this percentage reduces also. So and also these overhead, and so just trying to explain what these overhead and profit includes are, things which are not direct costs to the project. So printing a paper or printing drawings or, some other miscellaneous office back end things that you always have to do, but they're not directly related to the job. Like it's not, but it's still your overhead, right? So you have to account for those things. So that's overhead, which is your actual cost. And then there is profit. So profit is profit, but overhead is overhead, which is still cost to the job, to you, but not directly. That's not, you can't put it in your bin and be like, oh, this is an actual cost. It's not a hard cost or a soft cost towards this particular job, but it's still something that you have to account for. So that's how we kind of try to inbuild into our estimate. Yeah.
I kind of learned that on my way to ChatGPT, all the stuff, the proposals. And I said that I get confused with different. What's like the office supposed to be for the overhead, and what is the core shape that goes to the size to the project. So there's a couple things that I kind of get confused. I know I need to understand it, but I need to separate.
Right. I guess this is why you would start looking into Division 1, which is your general requirements. Often your Division 1 lists majority of these soft cost kind of things. You know, if you have to put a temporary, facility or super or all those kind of things, they all are related directly to the job. Like you need them physically to finish the job, to be there. So that's in your Division 1. So you would price that as your general requirements for that job.
So that's the overhead.
No, that's not overhead. That's division, like that's part of the job. Yes, that's part of the job. Like any overhead, I would say is like, as I was saying, paper printing and, like your back office kind of stuff. Yeah. Like if you have like a payroll department, right? Like that you're still kind of paying them, but you can't bill that to your project.
Proportionally to the project. You're going to bill it proportionally to the project.
In terms of overhead.
Right. Okay. Just to piggyback on what the young lady here is saying is like, so I have a scheduler. I have a payroll department. I have, let's go reduce to this. And
liability.
Well, and all the insurances, exactly. All those insurances, does that all apply to like overhead?
Insurance is not going to be your overhead. Bonds and insurance will be again directly part of the because again they do depend on the project to budget and it's directly to the project. Yes.
The general liability goes to the project.
General liability, no.
Okay, it's just a work.
But yeah.
So with what was just said, so my battle office,
Back office, yes.
the
Think of it. Okay, think about it this way.
bills, all those little the secretarial picture. Exactly.
Project again, the project manager, if he's there on site physically, like you need that, like that's your merit cost. That goes to your general. Think of it this way. Okay. Can you?
Just going to actually, we can have one conversation. We started to. I know this is lively, but let's make sure we just have a little conversation going.
Okay. Can you build this to the client? Think of it this way, like nobody's asking you to build that client, but like, okay, your project manager, he's your eyes on field. You need that person to be there. He's right there on site. So it's billable to that client. But your payroll person, as I was saying, she was billing or it was cutting checks. Can you bill that to this project? No, you can't really. So, like that's the kind of distinction. Like there are some things which you can build. Again, I'm not saying that you're billing, but like think of it that way. Like, can you bill it to this project? Yes, you can. So that's directly related to the cost to that project. And again, I really do think like if you start going over the specs on like Division 1, it will give you a better understanding of what all things. There are so many soft costs that we don't even think about that directly apply to the project, and they're all part of the project, which every contractor is putting in their bids. So do just a quick glance over the specs. Yes.
So Nisha, so rent will not be aware?
No, not rent. Look, but trailer, if you have a site trailer, that is, but not.
We put the cost of your office, it only comes from the project.
That's why overhead. So you would put it in over. Yes, yes.
I think
But you're not gonna hurt. Yeah.
like some of us, we on the construction part, and some of us we on the consulting part, different estimating. Like architects, engineers, and construction managers, their estimation is a little bit different. Same with our multiplier. So I think that I guess
Can we speak to that? Can you speak to that?
Yeah.
Sorry, Ms. Ball. Because I understand what you're saying. I'm a professional consultant. And again, some projects will allow for a multiplier. So we'll say you just bid it straight. But if you could elaborate a little bit about just the difference for, on the A&E side, because we do have a representation of firms who are architects. How does the multiplier kind of logic fit into this whole scheme?
So multipliers again, like for example, like me, I'm a consultant. Like when we bid on the project, my rate goes with a multiplier. A lot of times I do know the agencies kind of do like this is the multiplier you can use. This is what you cannot use. Yeah, they do. So it's a lot of times it's not in our hands too. So for example, like for a project, we kind of agreed on the rate. Now it's 4 years and that rate hasn't moved and like it's a fixed multiplier. Every time I work on the project, we lose money, but it is what it is. So, I mean, we said yes and like a bit, and it's government agencies, we can't really fight them. Like, what can you do? So the idea of the multipliers, again, similar to the labor rate, right? You have your payroll taxes and you're paying for their 401ks and you're paying for their, as an owner or as an employer, you're paying for their holidays, vacations, all that kind of stuff. So those multipliers cover all of those things. Yeah.
So after talk about this, so we are architects. The private worthy is a multiplier of 3. I've not bid too many lumber jobs, so you talk about CapEx. Is that 2, 2.5? What is the range so that I know when I bid for this?
You see, it's going to be there, but I see it's between 2 and 2.5. If you go higher than that, then that might take you out.
So softwares they'll give it, and it depends on the map you're using. Some will give you the actual multiplication amount for that pay rate, and they said that's the ceiling. If you go above that,
Yeah.
you are safe there.